How are things going with everybody? What's update us and me on the I'm with Zane every day. But want to hear what is going on kind of in your world and see if there's something that we could do to enhance it.
I mean, I can go for
Sure.
speak for
Go
speak for
ahead,
some.
Zane. You got a couple of things rolling right now.
Well, I was just gonna speak for some other members that's got stuff going on. I mean, that might not be on this call, but um, man, Jared Tilley, he just talked to us last night on the Respark call. An investor who just joined the group literally a couple weeks ago. He and Jared are partnering up on a deal that they're doing right now. They're getting the PSA signed and or they're working on that. They got the LOI all done up and everything and signed. So it's really great. That's one example of some great progress. Other members have just been submitting offers, negotiating back and forth. And what I tell a lot of you guys is like after you do your first offer and you're negotiating back and forth for maybe a couple weeks or 3 weeks, whether that deal goes through or not, you guys can pretty much find your footing from there. And like that's everything that you really need to do all the way up until raising money. And that's when we come in and we can kind of help you out from there. But man, it's so awesome once you make that first offer and you negotiate, you know all the contingencies that you need, you know all the little cross T's and dotted I's that you need. And that's just like something that you should strive for if you haven't gotten there yet.
And if you need earnest money, call Matt Smith.
I feel like I hear that on every call.
Always. That's such a good deal to me. I think that's like the greatest offer out there. Like you can just show up really with basically no money on a building and have the bank finance your earnest money and all even the cost at the closing. Does that happen often, Matt? Am I crazy by saying that?
Um, it 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 happens. I think the savvy investor is one that tries to get into a deal with none of their own money. So we're providing that avenue to do that. You know, basically another JV partner coming on board to
Yeah.
help out with money that an individual may not have.
Yeah.
So it's I worked with a guy this summer. He put a lot of offers in on high end residential, and he didn't get every deal closed, but he got some deals closed, and he used other people's money for the earnest money. So,
He-
and again, I mentioned it before, but the trick is you need to have the contingency period be the full length of the escrow. So close of escrow and contingency period should be the same
Okay.
end date. Otherwise, that money will need to be replaced before the end of contingency period.
I follow you. And
Yeah.
do you provide that, Matt, do you provide that like maybe I, I think you've emailed that to me before, and I'd be happy to share that with the group where uh you guys have maybe some select title companies that you work with or select closing attorneys that have your that same kind of creative appetite.
Yeah.
What would let's say for example that I got a deal under contract tomorrow or Jared or Zane or anybody here, what would be the next step with you? Like how can we 'cause I'm just trying to think about ways even for myself like okay, some people have more money than God, other people don't. My thought is if I can use somebody else's money for something and pay them an interest rate, I'm fine doing that as long as I'm still in that deal for very little money, at the end of the day. What would be the next steps for that if they got a deal under contract yesterday?
Yeah, I would suggest actually doing reaching out to me as you're approaching that time where you're going to write the sign the contract because there's a couple of there's some verbiage we like to put into it uh, that if you have to go back afterwards and sign it again or amend it, it's a little more awkward in the negotiation. So reach out to me as you're approaching that, and
Let me ask you this, Matt.
I'll
Let me ask
provide
you
the
this
verbiage.
because I'm curious now. Is there something that do you have like a standard purchase agreement or standard or something that's because most times I'll talk about like I don't know if my brother Connor's on here or not. Connor's got a deal that's tied up right now, and their broker introduced the purchase agreement, right? Their even guy even offered them or like offered Connor to come up with the purchase agreement. So it's like, so my question would be, is there vocabulary in those contracts um that are necessary for your team to come in and kind of bridge that earnest money?
There is, I don't think I have one that's
Okay.
necessarily appropriate for commercial industrial. I have a wholesale agreement, but I do have a one-page addendum that can be added to either, embedded into the contract that they provide, or just ask the broker to put it as an addendum. And it's basically it's an irrevocable release of EMD statement. So it's basically says that the seller irrevocably releases the EMD. There's no signature at the time of cancellation. The goal is that if we put money in and it's sitting there, that if there's a cancellation, we want that money back right away. And so we talk to the title company and we say, hey, do you recognize that they've already signed and released the EMD? So we don't need to ask them later on. So that's the goal of it. That's the primary thing that we ask for. And then again, however it's phrased, close of escrow equals contingency date. If the seller doesn't, if the seller refuses to do that, then we'll ride along with you during that, again, during the inspection period, but then you're going to have to come up with the funds.
Gotcha.
Our goal is, simply speaking, is basically escrow protected funding. That way we don't have to pre-approve you for a private money loan. We don't have to put any leverage on another asset to get our money back. We're protecting it at title. That's the key, right? So you don't have to give me your your soft credit score list of assets. It doesn't matter as much to me. I do want to know, maybe you're a serious investor, but anybody here in this group is a serious investor. So it just enables us to provide the funds. We know who it's going to and who it's coming back to. And yes, in answer to your title company question, we do have some, list of title company. I helps me to know the state. Then I kind of know, okay, I'm going to go to this one, or I'm going to look at my list and provide some suggestions. But yeah, if buyer can have title company preference, that's the best, because then it helps to reduce the amount of awkward conversation we may have with the title company, and they're going to their lawyer and they're asking, the attorney, is this okay? And usually when we have these conversations, they go, oh yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
When it's the right title
So
company.
basically, as a buyer, for everybody here, as a buyer, you need to be a bull about closing with your title company, with your closing agent and your closing attorney. Like, and make it a non-negotiable. Like, make it a total non-negotiable. And most people, especially sellers, when they get on that point where they're under contract and they're starting to get a little jittery and excited, they're going to do everything that they can in order to make the deal go across the finish line. I mean, now you probably experienced that. So my thought would be is when you guys are getting these deals tied up, letting the seller know that this is that you will walk away from a deal if I don't have the terms of and if I'm not in control of how we're closing, you know. And I think that's a very easy concession for sellers because they're just thinking about, spending the money that they're going to get at closing. In reality, you're the one that's in control of the entire transaction at that point. And you're the one that, especially if we, and by the way, guys, I've got a contract. I had well, two things for you guys. I have my attorney sent me a great commercial lease, a great lease that I will put in the group for you guys as like as a Word document, so you guys can you got, especially if someone's going to renew a lease or if they want to go. And the best part about this is everything is slighted towards the landlord. Like all the vocabulary is, again, it protects the tenant and things like that, of course. But all of the vocabulary is just like slighted towards the protection of the landlord. So I'll share that with you guys. It's a Word document, so you guys can just have that. And if you don't mind, just like make a copy of it for your next lease or maybe a lease renewal or whatever. But also, he has a great purchase agreement as well. That again, all you have to do is just put in like the fillables. So I would say this, Matt, if there's a possibility where there might be some vocabulary, maybe this might be an attorney idea, but if there's some vocabulary that can go in that or that amendment that goes attached to that contract, that we can input that. And then you guys all have just the oozing confidence to be like, I will walk from this deal if I'm not in control of the title and the attorney closing it, which again, they're going to want to do the deal. They're not going to lose the deal. They're not going to lose $1 million deal over who's what title company, you know? But if you're in control of that, it allows you to just slight everything in your favor. So does anybody have a thought or question on that, on how, and like I said, I can share all those documents with you guys, but does anybody have a thought or question on that?
Hey, Nolan, it's Jared.
Hey,
I'm
man.
working on drafting up a PSA now. If I could get that template sooner than later, I'd love to kind of compare and contrast and maybe
Oh,
even use the one you've got.
man, that's great. Yeah. I will. I got this on my to-do tonight. I will send this to you. Like I said, he basically it's really funny. I'll spare you guys all the details, but he was like, we were going back and forth about another lease, and he just kind of started to ghost me. And for those that were at the live event, it's not that one attorney, it's another guy. But he goes, he just like stopped responding to me, and I'm like, I go, this is so bizarre because like I've already asked for like his like, retainer link and everything, like for me to pay him retainer. And he just was totally going ghost. And I was like, maybe this guy's different. Maybe he's like, just working and knows I'll pay him on the back end. And I said, send me that retainer link. He emails it to me in like 5 minutes. I pay. He calls me like 10 minutes later and he's like, hey, all right, so sounds good. We're ready to rock and roll. And I was like, okay, so you really are no different. You really are like another attorney at that point that just needed to get paid first and prove that I was ready to go. It was kind of funny, but he's a great real estate attorney, Jared. Like he's got the great vocabulary, and I'll share again. I'll share this with everybody, and I'll share the purchase agreement, and I'll share the lease agreement that's malleable. So it'll be like a Word document, so you guys can just download it on your computer and just you can edit it, so it's not like a PDF. So
Perfect.
I'll share that with you guys when we get off this call tonight. So it's good.
Great.
Okay. All right. So who else are people working on certain things? I would, Jared, if you're on here, I would like you to tell us kind of about your deal right now that you're working on and this opportunity with one of our new members. Like this is the whole point of the group. Like this is the whole game, is matching up sponsors, money guys, people that we're discovering how to do deals. We're becoming more sophisticated with how we offer on property, and things are coming together. So Jared, tell us kind of about what's going on your deal, man. It's great.
Yeah, sure. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we've been negotiating back and forth. I mean, it all started with a formal LOI, with some options, right? One was like an all cash offer. One was 25% seller financing. And, I had talked to the owner's son-in-law, who's kind of helping him with the deal, and kind of floated out the first time I met him. And, they didn't say no, but they didn't say yes. So I felt like there was an opportunity there. So, I guess net, we ended up landing at 15% seller financing. So I've got to bring 10%, or an equity partner's got to bring 10% to the deal, or some combination. We got the LOI signed this past Friday. We've got like 10 days to draw up the contract, the draft of the contract, so that each of our attorneys can review it. And yeah, from there, like the next step is, I mean, obviously, working with the attorneys and moving forward with, requesting some insurance quotes and things like that. But all this thing, the thing that hinges entirely on getting a triple net lease signed during the due diligence period, meeting the right requirements in the LOI. So we're working with the leasing agent on that. That's why I'd like to see that lease agreement to potentially leverage that as well. And yeah, it's just I think for me, it's spending time with investors, or in this case, an investor, walking him through the entire deal, sharing all my documents to get him comfortable, and then allowing him to do his own sort of due diligence, and hopefully we can come to an agreement on something.
Tell us about how the capital raising went. I'd like to hear about the conversation because again, that's kind of the game that we're all chasing is of course the deal first, but then you got to come up with the money, whether it's from the seller, whether it's from a third party, like it doesn't matter. What was your pitch, Jared? Like how did, and again, maybe you guys have verbally agreed or whatever. By the way, on top of that, I've even got a one pager that you can send through DocuSign that just says, "Hey, this is a non-binding agreement." I can even share this, but it just shows like, hey, you verbally committed to this deal. Like you verbally have agreed to this. Do you have that already, Jared? Or
Is this with the investor or with the
with the
seller?
investor? With the investor.
No, we actually are reconnecting tomorrow because he's got some feedback on the deal. He's kind of gone through all the. So basically what I did is I just went through the entire deal. I started with the LOI and kind of like reverse engineered everything back from that into the pro forma and then into the proposal for financing. So I just kind of opened up everything to him because I wanted to be fully transparent and just walk him through the details of the deal, why it made sense. And then I sent that information to him for his review. And then we're going to come back tomorrow and kind of talk more about it. But I don't have any templates. This is the first time I've done this, first time he's done this.
That's
We don't
awesome.
really know what the hell we're doing, but
That's
we're going to
awesome,
figure it out.
dude. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And you guys can maybe help give us a little guidance on the way, and maybe we can, come to an agreement on something and move forward.
Yeah, no, that's great. I can share this again. I'll share a lot of this stuff tonight. I'm writing these things down to share like on my paper here. So again, this is like a very like simple letter of intent. It's non-binding like this, but it just says, "Hey, this is what it would look like." Again, this is just one deal, I guess, but you can share this with after you like get on the phone with somebody and discuss back and forth like your verbal agreement on terms. You can just share this one pager with them, have them sign this, which again is non-binding, but it allows it's a like a letter of intent the same way,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
it just allows you guys to be like, okay, we've agreed on some terms here. Now I'll go and actually retain an attorney and move that ball down the field at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And part of the process, the discussion was also kind of understanding what he would like, what he was looking for out of this, investment, what's important to him. And again, we're both new at this, so neither, I didn't know exactly. I was just kind of asking him. He's still trying to figure out what he wants and what's important to him. So some of this is just like a learning process, especially for new either investors or sponsors, kind of coming together and figuring out, how do you create this win-win where it works for both sides.
yeah. Man, that's great. That is so great. And half the fun as you guys are all discovering is it's like exhilarating making these offers, and then when it actually works out, you're like, all right, now what? Now what am I supposed to do? And so it's like this is where I feel like I can come in and hold your hand, be like, all right, here's the next step. Like I've been working, like I'm glad that this worked out for you, Jared. Like Connor's working on something right now where he's close to being under contract, probably in the next couple of days, just having the right vocabulary in the contract. But be like, all right, what's the next step here? What's the next step? And you only learn that from experiencing it, right? Like in doing it, where they can say you can learn how to ride a bike by reading about it and watching a video, but you really don't ever learn unless you're actually doing it, and then you actually fall down and scrape your knee and then get back on. So that's kind of the fun thing. I personally enjoy that. I not like failing, but I enjoy the process of experimenting and like discovering, hey, maybe how does this work? What's the next step here? It makes you a better investor, makes you smarter. You have experience at that point. That'd be my thought, I guess.
Yeah, and I think there's a level of kind of anxiety that comes with this, a lot of the unknowns. I do think that the blueprint kind of helps you. At least you kind of know what the next steps are. You don't necessarily know how to do it, or there may be work to develop a certain relationship with an attorney or others, an insurance agent. But at least you kind of know what needs to be done. It takes some of that that fear out of it, and you've got that blueprint to follow. So that's been helpful as well.
Good deal. That's awesome, man. That's great. Yeah. What else? Who else has something that they're working on? It's been like really fun. Zane and I are in the office, and I mean, it sounds hilarious, but like all we do is like talk about y'all and talk about the collective and like what people are up to and how things are moving down the field and stuff, which is great. So who else has something going on that we can touch base on? Has anybody else got something like tied up like that?
I've actually got a quick question. So I'm working on one over on a Porto Madrid. I feel like I've talked about it every call right now. But got in contact with Brian Cloud, the attorney today. So sent him over the PSA, and then he's also going to send me some questions to answer about the LLC. So I guess like before I sign the PSA, obviously I've read through it, and it makes sense to me. But I want to understand from like Zane and Nolan that like I should wait until like this attorney reviews it and is like, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, that's not a bad question. And I told Connor this the other day, guys, and I would recommend everybody do this too. Whether it's a lease or whether I've told this story before about like, me just discovering that I thought I had a gross lease, but it was really a triple net lease. I really, really recommend everybody to read through the actual document of a purchase agreement, because those things are, sometimes they're like 10 pages long and it can be a little overwhelming. You're like, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm just going to sign it. But especially if it's a legally binding document, you want to make sure that you know what's going on there, and spend like 30 minutes one night. And there's a lot of attorney language in there. Sometimes just like, I mean, I've done it myself, so I'm not above it. I mean, I've copied and pasted the word into Google and be like, what does this mean? Like, what does this word mean? And so I've learned a lot about, the legalese, that kind of thing, like the actual vocabulary. So when you guys are doing that, don't third party out reviewing a lease. Now, of course, have your attorney review it, right? But I really recommend you, the individual, look at that lease or look at that purchase agreement so you can understand what exactly you're on the hook for, what you're signing up for, right? So with Brian Cloud, who's a great attorney, he's a great real estate attorney. So anybody, and I think Brian can do real estate anywhere in the United States. So when that time comes, I need to update my a book of all of our people, so I can do that with Brian Cloud. But he's a great real estate attorney. He's really smart. And like I said a minute ago, he kind of like leans everything to our side as investors and landlords, which is the game. And most of these other people just they either don't want to pay the other attorney to like slide it their way, or they don't understand the legalese. So what I would recommend then, Connor, is again, have him read through the lease or the purchase agreement. It's gonna be middle of the fairway. One thing I did notice as I was reading through one of the emails is that the seller at the time, I think, was saying that he would like a personal guarantee from you if he has to subordinate his lien position on the property. Did you read that?
Yeah.
Okay. Which is not a bad thing, right? I've personally guaranteed a lot of debt. So I actually had lunch with my bank, or a couple of beers with my bankers earlier. One of my bankers earlier, we were just discussing another deal. But he brought up your project. And but as you guys know, a bank is not going to give you any money if there's an environmental issue, and second of all, if your seller is not going to subordinate their lien position, right? It just the bank has to be in first position. So when I read that, I was like, okay, I'll personally guarantee something, but don't think make sure that when you're speaking with those guys that, hey, yeah, you're going to be in second position here, and I'm okay personally guaranteeing it, but also um, you're behind somebody else, that kind of thing. Do they
Yeah.
understand or know that?
Yeah. I mean, I've talked to them and told them that
Okay, good. Okay,
we'll
good.
mortgage.
Does that answer your question, I guess?
I guess like, so I got the PSA today from the broker. And so, I mean, do we think and Brian was like, yeah, I can probably like get the LLC wrapped up by end of this week. And then I'm guessing at the same time, he'll probably review the PSA and, provide me any thoughts by the end of the week. So does it make sense to reach back out to the other broker and be like, hey, I'll have everything back to you by end of week?
I think I saw that broker. He was he seemed to come across pretty excited about like getting something for it. We will have this thing tied
Well,
up.
he's a douchebag either way. So I feel like
Yeah.
since he's got his ducks in a row, he wants mine in a row immediately.
Yeah,
So
that's right. That's right. I wouldn't worry about it. And I've told Connor this before. It's like instead of like always being so cordial and kind and like trying to be like you don't have to be a jerk, but I think it's sometimes it's better to be like, look, this is how we're doing this. This is what we're doing, and I'll get to you when I get to you. Like you got other shit going on in your life too, and this deal is a part of it, but it's not 100% of your life. So you get to it when you get to it. Wait to hear back from Brian, and then go from there.
all right.
So
Cool. That answers my question.
and one topic on this for everybody here. Connor's doing this deal, I believe, maybe by himself, maybe not, right? I spoke with him a couple of weeks ago, and he was thinking about bringing maybe a partner on to like guarantee some debt and things like that. Well, I recommended, now again, I'm not an expert, but if you can if you're going to have a partner on something, which I've got partners on a couple of properties, if you're going to have a partner on something, make sure that there is value being brought to the deal. Meaning, if you're partnering with somebody just because, you're going to find yourself very quickly jaded having to like give cash flow away to somebody else just because, you knew who they were or whatever, right? So what I would recommend doing is if you are going to partner with anybody, obviously make sure that there is some type of value being purchased, being brought, like you're giving up ownership of something in exchange for something, not just something for free. So I mean, if someone, for example, this other investor in our group or whoever, right, or Connor called Zane and said, hey, or if he said, hey, Keone, I'm looking to like do this deal, I need someone to personally guarantee this debt. Keone might say, go kick rocks, dude, like no thanks. Or he might say, well, how much equity are you willing to give up in order for me to sign on the dotted line? And then you guys can begin to negotiate, right? And then you see like you can actually close the deal, Connor, because you had a partner come on the deal and close with you. Don't just. And Keone's like thinking, well, shit, I'm getting 30% of something versus 100% of nothing just because I signed my name on a piece of paper. So there's like the way that I think about it is as long as there's a quid pro quo where I'm going to give you something, you give me something back of the same value, both parties end up winning. So just realize that and think about that when you guys are doing, as you guys are going and transacting. Anytime there's an opportunity, make sure there's a equal exchange of value. Is that Zane? Would you have something on top of that?
No, I think that's good. I mean, that's what we try to do with the members of the group when we're going and talking to investors is like, and Brian, I did this, Brian Villanueva was on this call, I believe. I did this with you just the other day, where I
Oh,
kind of
Brian,
like
what's up,
gauge,
man?
yeah.
Good.
Hey, how's it going? Good to
Good.
be here.
Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
Zane.
so yeah, no, you're good. But yeah, when an investor expresses interest in this asset class with you guys, what I did with Brian, for example, is just like, hey, what is your investment appetite? Are you looking for wealth creation with risk, or are you looking for wealth preservation that's conservative? Are you looking for long term, short term? What number, what amount? And then also, are you looking for cash flow, equity upside, or are you looking for depreciation, for example? And so other people have different wants or desires. A lot of people who are in the position to go and invest a bunch of cash into a deal
Damn.
are Clayton, I think you're unmuted,
You're
bro. Anyways,
Love it.
a lot of people who are in the position to invest a bunch of capital into something also have a big capital gains problem. So they want to save some some money in taxes by earning more on the depreciation side. So you can kind of pull and push levers with the equity and the cash, depending on what investor you're working with.
That's right. That's exactly right. 1000%. All right. Who's next? What else? Who else has something on their agenda, on their mind? I want to make sure I'm answering everyone's questions here. I'm seeing on the chat over here that Matt has sent this EMD steps, which is awesome. I'll share that on the group, which maybe has already been shared before, so I can do that. So, okay. All right. What's next for anybody else? Anybody else working on anything else?
I got some.
Yeah, hit it, man.
Nothing crazy. My day job has been kind of nuts, and then been traveling, ski season, that kind of stuff. So been on a little bit of the back burner, but working on a potential deal here over in Arizona. Another typical listing that was basically asking cap rate was at 6%. It's a little bit outside of Phoenix. It's another little growing town where there's a lot of vineries and vineyards and that kind of stuff happening. But there is a little industrial work up there, mostly mining. Little town called Prescott, and basically just working through a deal right now, talking to the seller's broker. It sounds like it was a family business, family gun shop slash warehouse, and they've been slowly downsizing, and the son took over it, and he still runs it, but they're building a new warehouse somewhere else, and they're talking about potentially renting out half the current space. The building's about 15,000 square feet as is right now. But it is split up into two sections. One's kind of the warehouse section, the other one's kind of their showroom. They want to keep their showroom and then do a potential seller lease back for the showroom portion and then leave the other portion for, future tenant. So I'm just working through with the broker, trying to figure out deals, figure out where the seller's at. Sounds like he's willing to be creative with it. He's still running the business and has other expenses and that kind of stuff. So,
Have you
that's
actually
kind of
spoken with the
my
seller,
update.
Tony?
What's that?
You actually spoken with the seller?
No, not yet.
And I that would be one of the first things that I'd do next. And it's like, because that broker game is telephone, right? If you
Yeah.
know the location of it and you got the deal from the broker, that's great. But I'd go and like buy that guy a cup of coffee and just again do the same song and dance, like get over like the initial fear, which I've had that in the past where you're meeting somebody new. You start asking questions about their life and how they got into the business and why they're selling, and you start to like just uncover. They will give the keys to the Mercedes away. Like they will give you every piece of information about everything because they're not in the real estate business, right? Like it's remarkable. If you're just like a young guy, like what you are, and you're like, man, I'm gonna go, I just want to be like a business owner like you. And you start giving them a little pat on the back. I mean, it's crazy the amount of information they'll give you away that you can begin to use for your advantage in the negotiation when you purchase the property. So what I would recommend doing on your sitch, man, like make a day trip or however far away it is from where you are and go sit down with that dude and buy him a cup of coffee or a lunch or a beer or something and just get to know him as a person. Because what that's going to do, it's going to create that oxytocin release in their brain. You probably heard me say that before, but it's that bonding chemical and they're like, damn, this Keone guy's a nice guy. Like he's a nice kid. He's working it, man. He's trying to figure it out. Like people want to help people succeed. Like it's just inevitable. And
Yeah.
when you go sit down with that guy versus playing telephone with your broker, he's gonna want to do the deal with you versus somebody else, right? Like even if of course if somebody else offers him an extra $1 million, he'll do it somewhere else, of course. But it's shocking how people will do things when you come across not as an expert but as a leader in the deal because they don't know what they're doing. They're just selling a property that they've owned for 20 years. And you sit down with them like, look, man, this is our business. But most importantly, I like to get to know you. How can we help you save money in taxes or create new cash flows, like whatever it is? I just think people have an appreciation for that because I just, it's a little, it's like feels like old school, but it's really not. So I don't know. Is that out of the is that
No,
out of the
no.
question to do something like that?
Hit the nail on the head. The only thing here that is kind of what I'm caught up on, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to approach it. I think that's a perfect approach, Nolan. That's kind of how I am. I'm more face to face, like to talk to people in general. I don't really love going through people to talk about somebody else's possessions, that kind of stuff. Um, the offer that I have on, so he's got it listed at 3.3,
Mhm.
and it's obviously sitting around a 6, 7 cap. And so my offer would end up having to be like, 60% of what he's has it listed at. Um,
Wait, I have a question though, Keone.
sure.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Is that 6 to 7% cap rate? Is that at what it's currently cash flowing at, or is that what you think the market might pay?
That's so I have a few things in here. I've played with it a few times. And I'm just playing with what my, and again, I haven't offered him anything yet. I'm just playing with my pro
Mhm.
forma.
Yeah.
In reality, like looking up stuff online, if you pull like an industrial lease comps in that area, it all kind of ranges, and you kind of got to play the, guessing game on which buildings are actually ready for that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
um, it's in between like $1.15 on the low end side and like $1.38 square foot a month. I'm talking
Mhm.
for that area from everything that I'm seeing. And then that broker, the seller's broker, was basically telling me that, hey, the guy who's selling the building, the current owner, would lease out that other half of the building that he wants to keep as his showroom, um, for what is it, $1.28, which is right in that ballpark. I know that's again the only thing that scares me on that though is I think she's kind of highballing it. Yeah, he'll lease you $1.28, and you can get that on the other half too.
Yeah, yeah, those are
There's
all
your NOI.
yeah, that's based on hypotheticals. Like one thing that you could do is I would of course run the numbers at the lower end of the rent per foot, but on top of that, then I'd start to look for ways to improve the value of the building, right? Like if there's an adjacent parcel, like you said, the if there's a more vacancy somehow where you could do something else to the property, because if you're buying it as it is, but you know that hey, you've got an ace in the hole with maybe the adjacent parcel where you can put a laydown yard, you can do something to improve the real estate that other people don't have or know. Well, then you can buy it at what he's asking, and he'll be much more inclined to leave money in the deal. Um, there you go. But my biggest thought is that the only way that you can buy something with such a suppressed cap rate is if you have an ace in the hole for increasing the value or doubling the value of the property, right? And if you don't have that, someone selling something for 7%, they're just not motivated. Like they don't have motivation to sell. Like they're going to wait around for a hedge fund to come across or some guy that's got 1031 money, and then you're out to dry and you've spent a bunch of time on a building that um, was never going to be yours in the first place. You know what I'm saying? So
Exactly.
that's where
Yeah.
my head is, I guess.
No, agreed. I don't know if you can see this. They've done some things to it. Can you see my screen?
So it says double click to enter full screen mode.
Cool. Good go. Uh-oh.
It's not popping up. I'm not sure. Maybe it's talking just directly to me.
No, it says that on mine too.
Okay.
Computer might have froze on me.
Well, what my opinion would be is again not telling you what to do or anything, but the first thing I do is I go sit down with this dude. Like you just don't want to spend a bunch of time on a deal that's just simply not going to freaking work out if the guy's not motivated. I mean, who's to say that this guy's not going to be like, well, I'm just selling this building because, my son-in-law is 22 years old. He just graduated, but he just became a real estate agent. He told me to sell it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you just don't ever know what someone's motivation is. Or you could say, hey, I actually have a health condition and I've got 6 months to live and I got to sell this thing immediately. You just never know, right? So what I would really, really recommend doing, and also, man, like I really can't put a price or precedent on how important it is. I told you guys the story maybe before with the Jefferson building that I bought. or the Goldenrod building I bought like last year. I sat down with that dude who's a big UAB basketball fan, right? I didn't know that at the time. I just sat with him and I like just got to know him as a person and what his business was, like whatever. He's got kids and this thing down the street and how he's got a grandkid, like whatever. Well, I got to know him so well. I went back and forth with the contractor. I saw him. His name was Jerry. We went back and forth. And when I offered him to leave money in the deal, he was about it. He actually asked me to leave more money in the deal. It's popping up now, Keone, but
Of course it
uh,
is.
but basically he was like, "Yeah, this is a great tax move for me. I'll definitely do this." And then his son got involved because he wanted to buy a house and needed the money, like whatever. And the son killed that deal, the seller financing portion. So I'm like, well, damn it. Now I got to go and like, it doesn't make any sense for him to do this, but he's doing it because his son is, whatever. So I say all that to say how important it is to build rapport. Is I was driving back to the office after exercise one day, and I just called Jerry up and I was like, Jerry, I need you to leave money in this deal. And I just told him what to do. I told him like you need to leave money in this deal. It's stupid if you don't. Like it's stupid. And I just used kind of like louder language like that, not in like an arrogant sense, but just in like a matter of fact sense. And he's like, man, I'm so glad that you called me. I know that that's the case. My son, I'm like, no, Jerry, this is your business. And it got to a point where, of course, then he left more money in the deal because he knew it was the right move in the first place. But because I had that rapport with him, I could never call that dude and tell him something to do, right? So I cannot recommend highly like how important it is just to sit down with some dude, spend 45 minutes with him or her, whoever, and get to know them, ask them about their family, what fraternity they were in, if they played sports, their kids, if they're in gymnastics, like whatever. It is so important. Like you can't put a higher emphasis on how important it is to just get to know the seller, go around the broker. They might get a little butthurt out of the gate, but that's okay because they're soft anyway. But you sit down with that dude, I'm telling you, it's going to pay off because you actually spoke directly with him and you can show that you're not just some hedge fund or some person on Wall Street. You're just a normal person. Like you're a normal guy or gal. So is that fair to say from like 30,000 feet?
100%.
So that's my opinion, I guess. Does
I will
anybody
vouch,
on that?
Keone. I will vouch, Keone, that that is the exact thing that's happened in my situation. That
Nice.
like the broker has just been awful to me, but like I still went and got coffee with the seller, and he really liked me after sitting down with him and his wife to talk about it, and like we didn't get to seller financing until the last 5 minutes, and at that point he was like, I'm not really into seller financing, but I'm not a no, and then after the fact, when I send my initial offer, he was like, yeah, I want to leave 150K in. Like it he calls me probably once or twice a week now and just bypasses the broker to talk separate agreement. I'm like, that's the relationship that I'm thankful that I've built with the seller. And so we've been able to get away with some other things because of that.
Sick. That's awesome, dude. Yeah.
Big time.
Doesn't happen overnight, of course, but like you play that game and you meet with those people, it ends up turning into something, which is awesome.
Agreed. Thank you, guys.
Of course. All right. Does anybody else have anything else? I don't want to cut this thing short. I got a dinner with a tenant tonight. He invited me, so I will. He wanted to leave his lease, and then he discovered that you can't find anything for the price that he has, and so he's wowing me over at a steakhouse. So what should I order? What should I do? Anybody got any
Steakhouse.
Eat the order the most expensive thing on the menu.
I like the old fashioned, please, with the Louis VIII bourbon, please. Yeah, or whatever. No, it'll be good. It'll be good. But like I said, I was having some beers with my banker like a couple hours ago. We do that like every other week, just get together, kind of just he's a friend of mine now, and we're all on the same page. Like you guys are discovering it. These tenants think that, oh yeah, I can just move somewhere else and do whatever. They're discovering that it is shockingly expensive to move your equipment from a location to somewhere else. You're also not selling anything while you're moving. You have to pay for holding costs while it's sitting at a storage facility as you're looking for a new site, and you're moving probably to a more expensive location. So this tenant, I think, is he was wanting to move and he's realizing like, oh my God, I got a really good deal with Nolan right now. So I want to rake him over the coals a little bit on some rent and see what I can get. See what happens. But again, I don't want to cut this thing short. Does anybody else have anything else before we jet out for the evening? Awesome. All right.
I don't
Well, I
think you have
appreciate it.
anything. I got
Oh,
one quick question on that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
building, Nolan. If I found this deal just on my own, kind of looking and whatnot, would there be any sort of benefit to that seller saving any money or not having to pay my end of a portion of a broker?
Say that again. What do you mean?
Like, if I didn't have a broker in this deal,
Uh-huh.
would that be any sort of a benefit to the seller as like, hey, look at my offer price, you don't have to pay 2 broker fees?
Yes. It's not going to save him much. It'll save him, I mean, well, on a $3 million deal, it'll save him probably 40 grand.
Well, I mean, a lot of times what I've seen is that if a broker is only representing both sides or really just only the seller and he's kind of just mediating with the buyer, then the seller could pay, like 4 or 5% rather than the whole six. Is that what you were saying, Nolan?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, maybe pay like 4% versus 6% because he's getting 4% versus 3%, on the global amount of the sales price.
It's a win-win.
Yeah. So it ends up him making more money. And again, like you said, it's not really anything out of your pocket, of course, but you can use that as maybe a negotiation tactic and say, hey, if you work directly with me, I'm not being represented by anybody. So your broker is probably going to want to get both sides of this commission, which is going to excite him to want to work with you even more.
Just looking for more ammo. Yeah.
That's right. No, I love it. I love it. Another bullet in the chamber. Love it. All right, man. I appreciate everyone tonight. Again, you guys have my cell. You have Zane and I's information. Anything you guys need, anything, please do not hesitate. Call us, email us, message us. Again, I have these things written down. I've got a purchase agreement. I've got a lease to download. I've got the letter of intent with investors. I will upload all this stuff so you guys can have all this. And then again, if you don't mind, just like download the Microsoft Word copy and then just make a copy or download it and make a copy on your computers. That way it doesn't like mess up for everyone else. So I'll share all that stuff for you guys to have. And if you have any questions about like vocabulary or language in it, like just don't hesitate to call us and ask us. Sound good? Awesome. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for the time tonight. And again, when that time comes, I will for earnest money financing, like having Matt be a part of that. I think we're all just kind of coming together as a group of like what everyone's trying to do, which is awesome. So thanks everyone for making it tonight. Have anything else? Let Zane and I know, and we will go from there. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. See you guys. Have a good evening.